program. Spirituality of a person is reflected very much in the place of our work, in our commitments and relationship. Today, we have with us an eminent person, Dr. Sister Anita Baird, a daughter of the heart of Mary. Good morning, Dr. Sister Anita.
Good morning.
We are very
To
happy
you,
to
I
have
should say good evening. It's morning here. The sun is coming up. It's evening there, so good evening.
we are happy to have you with us when your clock shows 5:30 a.m. and ours shows 4:30 p.m. On behalf of our principal, Dr. Juliet CJ, the management, organizing committee, and the staff of School of Social Work Roshni Nilaya, I deem it a pleasure and privilege to welcome you all for the day 3 of Faculty Development Program. The theme for today's session is College and Campus Spirituality. Women leaders have made a difference in every milieu of society. Today, I'm delighted to present a woman of integrity, strength, values, principles, and discipline. Dr. Sister Anita Baird, a native of Chicago, who is a member of religious congregation of the Society of the Daughters of Heart of Mary. She has served as regional superior, provincial councillor, and most recently as provincial of United States. She is a member of St. Sabina Catholic Church in Chicago, where she has served in diverse leadership roles, including chair of the Spiritual Life Institute and as a member of preaching staff. Sister Anita became the first African American to serve as Chief of Staff to Archbishop of Chicago. She was appointed as the founding director of the Archdiocese of Chicago's Office for Racial Justice. Sister Anita has been recognized for her religious and community activism across the nation. She has given the opening keynote address at the 9th National Black Catholic Congress in Chicago. She is a past president of National Black Sisters Conference and recipient of the organization's Harriet Tubman Moses of Our People Award. Other honors include the NBC 5 Jeffsons Award for Outstanding Community Service and the Fresh Spirit Award in the recognition of her outstanding spiritual and community leadership in the city of Chicago. Sister Anita was awarded an honorary Doctor of Minister degree from Catholic Theological Union in recognition of her outstanding contribution in the work for racial justice in the church and the city of Chicago. Her motto of faith is do whatever God tells you. Sister Anita strives to live her life listening to God's word, acting upon God's word, and doing whatever God instructs her to do. Dr. Sister Anita, we are honored and privileged to have you with us as a resource person for our International Faculty Development Program. Now I request, ma'am, to share your expertise on today's topic. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for that gracious introduction. It is certainly an honor to be with you. And as I said, I'm watching the sun coming up here, and it is late afternoon in India. So the miracle of technology is a wonder in itself. I want to thank Dr. Janice and the School of Social Work for this opportunity to explore the subject of faith and spirituality in college students' lives. It's a very important subject. Let me begin first by saying I am certainly not an expert in this field. However, last year I worked with several colleges and their Newman centers and their students when George Floyd was murdered here in Minneapolis. And so students were seeking answers, asking questions, wanting to be involved and wanting to tie it together with their own understanding of faith and spirituality in the context of so much violence that we see going on in the world today. So I bring that, and I want to bring a broad perspective around this issue. I certainly have had no international exposure or experience with college level students around the globe. And so you come with your expertise and understanding in your areas. So I want to have a general conversation and hopefully present some thoughts for you, some ideas that you will find useful and can apply it to your particular situations. Let me begin by asking a question, and it's in my understanding that all good teachers begin with a question. So this is my question. Why are we engaging in this particular topic? Why is it important? And I want to offer a few suggestions to you. I think to begin with, we understand that what happens with students around this particular issue of spiritual development is critical to their future and to the future of society as a whole. We believe it is an essential part of your mission as educators to mentor students into a deeper experience, understanding, and integration of their spiritual lives. You often encounter students who are exploring questions of meaning and purpose. That is the whole point of higher education. Exploring in a way common and consistent with much of the theory and literature on the spiritual growth and development at the college level. And often, I would think, as educators and as people in general, as parents, we're often left with more questions and concerns than answers emerging from our work with students. So hopefully we will benefit from this dialogue around the issue of spirituality in the lives of college students. And I want to first distinguish, I think it's important, between religion and spirituality, which are often mistakenly understood as synonymous terms. And while I believe that all people are spiritual to some degree, I recognize that not all are religious and vice versa. I have met more than a few religious people who were severely deficient in the area of spiritual development, and spiritual people who were not religious at all. According to the Random House Dictionary definition, religion is a concern over what exists beyond the visible world, operating through faith and intuition as opposed to reason. Religion generally includes the idea of the existence of a single being, a group of beings, an eternal principle or transcendental spiritual entity that has created the world, that governs it, that controls its destinies, or that intervenes occasionally in the natural course of history. Religion is a specific fundamental set of beliefs and practices generally agreed upon by a number of persons or sects, and is the idea that ritual and prayer, spiritual exercises, and certain principles and conduct arise naturally as a human response to the belief in such a being or eternal principle. Spirituality, on the other hand, is a concept whose definition is a bit more diffuse and with less agreement regarding its meaning. According to Random House again, and for the purpose of our discussion, let's define spirituality as an internal process of seeking personal authenticity, genuineness, wholeness, as an aspect of identity development. The process of continually transcending one's current locus of centricity. Spirituality is the development of a greater connectedness to self and others through relationships and union with community, the process of deriving meaning, purpose, and direction in one's life. And it involves an increasing openness to exploring a relationship with an intangible and pervasive power or essence, or center of value that exists beyond human existence and rational human knowing. In both of these definitions, there will be areas that overlap. And the main area being that in both religion and spirituality, there is a concern for that which exists beyond the rational and visible universe, both which attempt to provide a means for understanding or knowing that which lies beyond our physical, time-bound world. One aspect of the beyond is the notion of a supreme being. In religion, the being or beings is identified. In spirituality, there can be an openness to a supreme being, even perhaps a belief that something exists beyond what we can see. But also there is a tentativeness about just whom or what this something or somebody is. A spiritually developed religious person may very well identify that entity as God, whereas a spiritually developed non-religious person may have no means or no need for that matter of defining that which lies beyond rational knowing. When discussing spirituality, the term often used is supernatural, explicitly in the sense of that which exists beyond the natural world. Deity and divine power are issues of religion. And in these two sets of definitions, we can also see the potential for great resonance, interaction, and some overlapping. Religion, with its beliefs, practices, rituals, prayers, spiritual exercises, can be and is for many people a wonderful means by which one can explore one's spirituality and develop spiritually. It provides a language, a context, and often a community through which an individual can pursue their spiritual journey. The problem, of course, is that these definitions only tell a part of the story of religion and spirituality as a lived reality. In many instances, religions and people acting in the name of some religion have behaved in ways that are antithetical to the notion of genuineness, wholeness, transcendence, and connectedness that are expressed in the definition of spirituality. Unfortunately, our human history is stained with the blood of people oppressed, abused, and murdered in the name of religion, in the name of its supreme being or its doctrines. And although I am not an expert in religions, I cannot think of a single religion that does not fall into this category. Be it Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, all at some point have condoned or otherwise supported anti-spiritual actions. Right here in the United States, we are coming to a reckoning of the historical implications of slavery, racism, and systemic racism today. And religious congregations are facing, many of them, their own ugly past around slavery. The Jesuits in this country, particularly at Georgetown University, have acknowledged the role that they played in owning and selling enslaved people in order to preserve and to save Georgetown University. And today, as a means of atonement and reparations, the Jesuits have set up a fund for the education of the descendants of those enslaved people that were owned and sold by the Jesuits. Many religious congregations of women, particularly in the southern states, owned slaves and benefited from the sale of slaves. And so we all can look at our own particular traditions and we realize that we have much to atone for in the practice of religion. So differentiating between the notion of religion and spirituality has real consequences when we look at the development of college students. There are many changes that happen in young people's lives as they transition into the university level environment. Developmentally, it is a time when identity formation is challenged with exposure to new concepts and individuals who are different from oneself. Young adults learn to depend less on their nuclear family for the formation of their belief systems. Also, most studies done in the last 10 to 15 years have shown significant decline in religious attitudes, values, and behavior. And when religion and spirituality are considered one and the same, one would also think that spirituality as well was in decline. However, the specific practices often addressed in college research are areas around, visible areas around religion, such as gathering around one's faith, prayer, identification with a particular religious tradition and belief in a supreme being. So the data is limited, and the issues that they have looked at are tied more to religion than it is necessarily to spirituality. There are, however, changes in students identified in related studies that are not often associated with religion, but related specifically to spirituality and spiritual development. These include a movement toward greater altruism, humanitarianism, and social conscience, or social, more social, racial, ethnic, and political tolerance, greater support for the rights of individuals, and for gender equality, and being able to consider and respect situations beyond one's own perspective. Each of these changes can be seen as somewhat spiritual in nature. As students deal with tensions between ancient traditions and new ideas, conformity and questions, guilt and freedom, self-interest and unselfishness, they slowly begin to recognize the need to take responsibility for defining their own positions, to commit to beliefs that ring true to their deepest selves, all the while remaining open and tolerant. The purpose, I believe, of spiritual and religious life on campus is to support and advance the exploration and expression of spirituality, religious life, faith traditions, values, and philosophies of life within the context of higher education. It seeks to provide access to activities and programs that enable students to pursue full spiritual growth and development in their particular faith tradition, pursuing full spiritual growth and development, thereby fostering a campus atmosphere in which every member of the community may freely express their religious spirituality and faith. It also provides opportunities for students to be centered in a supportive, caring environment while exploring the connections between faith traditions and real world complexities, making a difference in the lives of others through service and to grow in a sense of their own abilities and self-awareness. They find that they are doing much more exploring in ways that they have not done previously to entering college. And as we become more diverse and globally connected, it's important that college students are able to develop holistically, body, mind, and spirit as one, as they prepare to take their proper places in the world arena. We certainly live in a very small world house. And what happens here in the United States impacts what happens in India. And what happens in India impacts what happens here. We are one family, and the world is becoming smaller. And students are going to have to find their place in this new world order and what they will bring to that. They must not only be well educated in their particular fields of study, but they must be well-rounded as human beings, including their quest for spiritual growth and understanding in a pluralistic society. It is clear, I believe, that with increased technology and mobility, people from various faith traditions and worldviews now interact either by choice or by situation much more frequently than in the past. The marvel of Zoom, being able to connect around the world in a moment's notice, has changed how we interact with one another. As history attests, diverse groups are either unwilling or often unable to constructively regulate worldview differences. And in an increasingly multicultural world, understanding and appreciation of religious and worldview differences are potentially beneficial to social functioning. Many campuses are microcosms of the cultural and religious pluralism that reflects critical years in the development of social attitudes and perspectives. And for these reasons, we should expect students' experiences would influence their development of pluralistic attitudes. It is clear from several studies, one being conducted by the University of California here in Los Angeles in 2011, that institutional contexts greatly differ in terms of facilitating spirituality in students. Cultural and religious diversity are not evenly distributed throughout our society. Developing a pluralistic orientation among students at smaller institutions will likely be a greater challenge than at larger institutions, where a large percentage of the student body speaks a language other than English at home. Furthermore, diversity should not be conceptualized only on an individual level. Institutions of higher education themselves are more diverse with greater varied reasons for existing. It is also not surprising that the institutional context that is most resistant to religious and spiritual pluralism, according to the study done by UCLA, is in the conservative religious institutions, while Catholic institutions more often are open to developing an ecumenical worldview. The view that college tends to have a liberalizing effect on the religious views of students, even to the point of being a breeding ground of apostasy, is simply not found to be true. According to some studies, little change in religious commitment and only a slight increase in religious struggle were experienced. According to their findings, religious beliefs are less likely to dramatically change or to be substantially decreased during college, as much as they are likely to be re-examined and are modified. This is the period of exploring, of asking questions, of seeking answers. Moral issues, which are often related to one's religious or spiritual perspective, are often handled differently than other issues. The criteria used for determining the legitimacy of differing perspectives appear to differ when making moral versus non-moral judgments. Let me give you an example. Students are more likely to rate their own opinions and the opinion of a disagreeing other as equally objective on non-moral issues. For example, gas versus electric cars, or buying hardcover versus paperback or ebooks. However, when the opinion dealt with a moral issue, such as capital punishment or abortion, both religious and secular college students tended to rate their own opinions as more carefully thought through and more objective than the dissenting other. So there is a much greater shift in terms of how college students view opinions that differ from their own based on the significance of the moral question at hand. And although religious students showed this tendency more strongly than did secular university students, the tendency was shared by both groups. The tendency to self-enhance an opinion objectively is greater when an issue is interpreted to possess significantly more weight or touch more personally on a person's religious values, beliefs, traditions. Students appear to be particularly defensive of their moral judgment and are thus perhaps less open to other perspectives. Therefore, as educators and institutional leaders, you must ask the question, how can diverse religious commitments be fostered, integrated, and preserved in the midst of postmodern higher education? How can college and university administrators help nurture global citizens for the 21st century who will be part of the solution of interreligious bigotry and violence rather than part of the problem? The postmodern challenge to the Enlightenment view is that objective, universal truth affects both those who believe and those who are unbelievers, those who identify as being religious and those who identify as being spiritual. It seems that religious and secular people alike might be able to hold both modernist and postmodernist perspectives in creative tension through a fallible approach in the search for truth. Namely, asserting that there is an objective reality we are all in search of, but that our knowledge of it will always be partial and in need of varying perspectives to elucidate it. This is the point of the Hindu metaphor of the blind men and the elephant. Each man is describing the part he is feeling. The hard tusk, soft and wet mouth, scratchy and dry hide, broom-like tail. He's describing this with confidence that he is adequately articulating the whole. Yet, if they would all listen to each other and relax their complete confidence that each one knows best, together they can construct a better picture of the reality of the elephant. Many scientists and religious scholars do in fact work this way, without falling into either of the twin traps of absolutism or relativism. Research has shown that students can be simultaneously committed to their faith traditions and at the same time open to pluralism. The resulting suggestion that personal faith and a pluralistic disposition are mutually reinforcing rather than antithetical is something that many university chaplains observe when doing in-depth interfaith programming. Many students come to interreligious engagement with a fear that they might lose their personal faith and their commitment to their own religious traditions. But they are astonished to find that they simultaneously deepen their own faith and religious commitment as they become more interreligiously literate and relationally adept in understanding other religions and faith stances. Ultimately, many come to feel that this is not surprising after all. Learning about aspects of other traditions that seem useful to their peers, like meditation, fasting, or ritual use of beads, helps students find analogous dimensions of their own traditions. In other words, they can find things that they relate to in other faith traditions. Being challenged about the nature of their own tradition in relation to others often leads them to find out more and to want to gain a greater appreciation of their own religion. They want to study more, learn more, to find out what religions have in common. And interacting with other students of faith provides a new level of comfort and confidence in their own life of faith, that they're on a journey and they're not on the journey alone. Most colleges and universities now operate on the basis of developmental models in the lives of their students. Even if few staff and faculty are as well aware of stage theory as it applies to spiritual development, they are aware that there are many stages, particularly psychosocial, cognitive, as well as moral development that students go through. Beginning first, we look at the dependent stage. And in the dependent stage, the person or student acquires a meaningful outlook on life by following religious doctrine and moral rules with strong peer group support and guidance by a compelling leader. They are dependent on others to show them the way, to teach them what they need to know. At this time in the life cycle, God, however they identify this supreme being, is usually imaged as a parent figure, unconditionally loving, but also deeply judgmental and something or someone that will punish you for doing wrong. At the independent stage, the person begins to find spiritual authority with instead of relying on. The key word here is with their peers, with family members, respected religious leaders, and our elders. During this stage, when they do not want to be part of any institution or under anyone's control, their idea of God becomes more impersonal, described as spirit or natural law or life force or energy in the universe, and experience less as someone who answers prayers or intervenes directly in human affairs. All major world religions support all stages of faith development. However, these different stages can become disconcerting to students, to their friends, their parents, their teachers, administrators alike. They can go back and forth from the dependent stage to the independent stage because they are seeking, they are looking for answers. Nothing is concrete at this point. A flexible and somewhat fallible framework can help students and those around them to retain confidence that they can remain within the sphere of their religious tradition and deepen their faith, even as they become open to substantial change in their personal understanding and feelings about a number of elements in their own tradition. This framework should include, but is not exhaustive, of the following points. First, spiritual quest. Spiritual quest reflects the degree to which the student is actively seeking to become a more self-aware and enlightened person and to find answers to life's mystery, to life's big questions. Equanimity is the second part. Equanimity measures the extent to which the student is able to find meaning in times of hardship, feels at peace, sees each day as gift, and feels good about the direction of his or her life. The third is the ethic of caring. The ethic of caring reflects the student's commitment to values, such as helping others in difficulty, reducing pain and suffering in the world, and promoting racial and ethnic understanding and coexistence. This would be the point that I entered into dialogue and conversation with students last year around all that was happening here in this country. It was coming from their ethic of caring, wanting to contribute, wanting to ease pain, wanting to make the world a better place. The next is charitable involvement, and that includes activities such as participating in community service, donating to charity, helping friends with personal problems. And the last is ecumenical worldview. This indicates the extent to which the student is interested in different religious traditions, seeks to understand other countries and cultures, feels a strong connection to all of humanity, and believes that all life is sacred and interconnected, that they are members of a small world house. Spirituality, as defined by these measures of spiritual quest, equanimity, ethic of caring, charitable involvement, ecumenical worldview, defined by these measures, is a multifaceted quality involving an active quest for answers to life's big questions. A global worldview that transcends ethnocentrism and egocentrism for an ecumenical worldview. A sense of caring and compassion for others, the ethic of caring, coupled with a lifestyle that includes service to others, or charitable involvement, and a capacity to maintain oneself one's sense of calm and centeredness or equanimity, especially in times of stress. While religious engagement and religious social conservatism declined somewhat during college, students' spiritual qualities grow substantially. So they do not decrease, they increase. Students show the greatest spiritual growth when they are actively engaged in the inner work through self-reflection, contemplation, meditation. These are the ways that they strengthen their religious commitment, their religious engagement. And most forms of charitable involvement during college, community service work, helping friends, donating, promoting the development of the other spiritual qualities, exposing students to diverse peoples and cultures and ideas, often through study abroad, through interracial interaction, interdisciplinary coursework, service learning, and other forms of civic engagement. These all contribute to the spiritual growth. Providing students with more opportunities to connect with their inner selves facilitates growth in their academic and leadership skills. It contributes to their psychological well-being and enhances their overall satisfaction with life. Pluralism is also a critical element in helping students in higher education become true global citizens and leaders, and bulwarks against interreligious bigotry and violence. College and university context becomes critical in promoting interfaith understanding and cooperation. Nurturing the religious and spiritual life of students must be a critical part of the mission of higher education in the 21st century. This is because our colleges and universities must be committed to creating global citizens and promoting lifelong civic engagement as ways to develop the whole person. Specifically, at this challenging moment in our world, it is crystal clear that interfaith understanding is central to the well-being of the planet itself. There are 4 principles that are critical in promoting interfaith dialogue and respect all relating to the university context. First, religious life structures on campus. Second, access and oversight for religious groups. 3, the integration of intellectual inquiry. And 4th, religious practice and religious pluralism itself. It is strongly recommended that all institutions of higher learning have a department dedicated to religious, spiritual, and ethical life, which is funded and supported by the university and strategically placed to promote its effectiveness and influence. The department's purpose is to provide a space for religious professionals to create and sustain a diverse student interfaith bodies. It is charged with accommodating diversity of religious expression on campus, both in terms of promoting the free exercise of religion, while also maintaining a welcoming environment that is free of religious coercion. The department affirms the compatibility of free intellectual inquiry and religious commitment. This includes promoting academic values of inquiry, multiple perspectives, and critical thinking. Finally, the department should encourage and promote university-wide in understanding and respect for the multi-faith reality of higher education, while at the same time embracing and engaging the particularity of each religious tradition. This means extending hospitality and meeting the needs of each religious group and individual, especially in relation to underrepresented traditions, and educating the entire campus community about religious, spiritual, and ethical life, thereby countering religious bigotry and violence, advocating for human rights from within religious and secular traditions, and understanding and addressing social issues. Many colleges and universities have created interfaith centers on campuses that include an interfaith sanctuary, a seminar room, a safe gathering space, a student lounge, perhaps a library, dedicated prayer spaces for different traditions, and offices for chaplains and campus ministers representing diverse religious beliefs. For most schools, this would include all of the religions that would be on campus, allowing people to express their faith, also to be inviting to others to learn about different faith traditions, and coming to the understanding that we have more in common than we have differences. The bottom line is that we are seeking truth. Students are seeking truth, and there are unlimited ways of searching for truth. Such places provide that safe space where students of different traditions can literally rub elbows with each other. They can roll up their sleeves to participate in each other's service projects, which here I find to be very desirable. It's a means of sharing a common concern or idea and working together to learn about each other's traditions through meals, through stories, literature, prayer, through joining together when possible, spending time in meditation, and to exchange or engage in safe and open discussions. Finally, the implications are clear for those working in advanced education. First, we must reflect on our use of and understanding of religion versus spirituality. We have to ask the questions, do we use these terms synonymously? Do we differentiate them in conversation and practice? Are we clear about the differences? Do we enter into a conversation with students about their understanding of the difference between religion and spirituality? Do we educate others, other faculty members, in the use of those terms? We need to consider the impact of our assumptions, correct or incorrect, on our perception of the students we teach. Do we assume that our religious students are somehow more spiritually developed than those who do not practice a traditional religion? As I said at the very beginning, someone can be very religious and not have a clue about spirituality or the spirituality in their own life. And those who are very spiritual can have no experience of religion and often feel they do not need the experience of religion. Often they see it as being confining. They see the warts, they see the shortcomings in all religions. And so they want to move beyond that. And so they embrace the sense of the spiritual, something that they are seeking in terms of truth, in terms of being better people. Do we recognize that a rejection of traditional religious beliefs and practices may, in fact, be a forward step in a student's spiritual quest and overall development? And do we recognize and respect non-religious avenues of spiritual development as authentic? I believe if we are interested in promoting spiritual development on campuses, there is much value in preserving and promoting religious pluralism in higher education. That is, not separating and holding religion apart from student affairs, but welcoming in and supporting multiple religious practices as well as non-religious avenues of spiritual development. Finally, those working with students need to challenge them to differentiate between these two realities. Continued studies and conversations about the differences between religion and spirituality can be a stimulus for continued growth throughout one's lifetime. Whether one is 21 or 81, the quest for truth is a lifetime journey of learning, living, and experiencing the invisible and transcendent mysteries of faith and spirituality. As educators, helping students to create a firm foundation for the journey will support them throughout life's many ups and downs, twists and turns, for seeking truth, for understanding who we are and our place within this universe in the context of this moment in history. What does that mean? How do we respond to that? How do we live that out? It is a lifetime quest for truth and is not the practice of religion or spirituality, seeking truth, the meaning of truth. So, in your role as educators, you help your students to create this firm foundation of the journey. And this is the greatest gift that you can give to future leaders. It is certainly a gift without end. It is also a means for helping to create a better world, a safer world, a more just world, a more peace-filled world, when we can come together as sisters and brothers, seeking truth, seeking to be one as a human family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sister Anita. Good evening, one and all. I am Roshni Govias, Assistant Professor in Psychology at School of Social Work, Roshni Nilaya. Dear participants, we are now open for discussions and questions. So if you have any question, any clarification, you could type it in the chat box. Yes, we have a question by Miss Janice Mary. How can we foster a spiritual connectivity between the faculty and the students in the work teams and in promoting healthy work culture?
Thank you for that question. As I said, my area of expertise is not in higher education, but I believe that dialogue, open dialogue, discussion, faculty having these conversations, because I don't think it's not, we're talking about students, but I know in my own life, each and every day, I struggle with issues around faith, around religion, around spirituality. that I have been shaped over time, and that changes. I'm not the person that I was yesterday or a year ago, and to understand how my faith journey impacts my life and impacts the lives of those that I am in communication with, that I share life with, that I break bread with. So I think for educators to create spaces where they can explore those questions themselves, to ask the questions, to dialogue, to learn more, will only enhance their ability to walk with their students as they ask their own questions and seek answers.
We have another question. It is by Dr. Jacinta D'Souza. So it goes like, how can we enable the students to imbibe the quest for truth?
Hello, Jacinta. It's nice to hear from you. I think, as I said earlier, we encourage students, we encourage each other through example. And I think creating safe spaces, and that's why I think it is so important to have a place and a space where they will feel safe, where students feel safe, where they feel they're not being judged, where they can ask the hard questions, the unpopular questions, and be accepted for who they are and where they're at, and encouraged on their journey to continue seeking truth and seeking understanding and knowledge. I think is how we open that up. It's important for them to feel that they can speak their truth without being judged, and that there is validity in their truth. It is theirs, it is sacred, and it is to be honored.
One more question by Mr. Ashok Kumar. Why people cannot understand the spirituality? They speak about religion, but it's based on good faith.
Thank you for that. That's why I felt it was important to spend time with you this afternoon talking about the difference, because most of us approach our lives and our beliefs through the lens and the context of religion. Religion can be very divisive and it can unite, but it depends. And so I think around spirituality speaks more to the inner self of our being, to who we are called to be and to fulfill our goodness, to live that out. And we can do that certainly in the context of religion, but it doesn't have to be limited to that. It can be a much broader palette that we are creating. And so I think, it is important for us perhaps to approach students from the perspective of spirituality to begin with. And then, if it moves into religion, but the spirituality can somehow be a common denominator to begin the conversation.
Dear participants, do you have any other questions? I think the questions are done, ma'am.
Okay.
Now go ahead with the program. I request Ms. Anuradha Shetty, Assistant Professor and Chairperson of Rural Entrepreneurship Development Cell, School of Social Work, Roshni Nilaya, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Roshni Govias. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. Pure till heart. Good morning to our guest of honor, dear Sister Anita Baird, member of Religious Congregation of the Society of the Daughters of the Hearts of Mary, United States of America, and good evening to all gathered here in this virtual mode. I am sure today in this virtual platform, all the faculties and the educationists are highly motivated and inspired from your speech as how to facilitate a better educational and empowering environment by nurturing spirituality in the campus. On behalf of principal, vice principal, management, and faculty of School of Social Work, Roshni Nalaya, I'm honored to express my gratitude for this beautiful and awakening journey with you, Sister Anita Baird. My heartfelt gratitude to you, ma'am. My sincere gratitude to Dr. Juliet CJ, Principal, Dr. Janice Mary, Vice Principal, and Miss Evelyn Benes, Secretary, Institute of Social Service, for facilitating such an awakening event like this. I wholeheartedly congratulate and acknowledge the hard work put in by the organizing committee. We at School of Social Work Roshni Nilaya immensely pleased with the support and collaboration from our alumni association around the globe. We look forward to your solidarity in future endeavors too. Finally, I thank all the enthusiastic participants for your active participation. Once again, thanking each and every one. Now, I request all the participants to on the video for a group photo. Dr. Kiran Prasad, sir, are you done with the taking?
I've taken.
Yes. So see you all tomorrow in another enriching and exciting day. Now we will sign off for the day. Stay home, stay safe.